One of the most important bits of information right now is this whole Islamic caliphate, jihad, and the methodologies of striking terror in the hearts and minds of infidels. One of those methodologies is to chop somebody's head off. Nothing strikes fear in the hearts of people as much as just chopping somebody's head off does. And the individual that we have right now with us, live and in color. Do we have Robert Spencer? Robert, are you there?
I am here.
All right. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you, sir?
Good, good. Robert's a dear friend. He is an author. I think it's 12 books now, Robert?
Yes, that's 13, actually. 13.
13. When I decided to get seriously involved in studying Islamic jihad, I picked up every book Robert wrote and devoured it, and I think many people who are in this battle can
He's
say,
the brain. He's the brain.
We owe it to his scholarship. You know, it's tough writing one book. It's tough writing an article, let alone 13 books. So he's established himself as an expert, as a scholar, but he's also an activist. He's been very involved with Pamela Geller, a dear friend of ours, with Freedom Defense Initiative. Just today, I saw another press release going out about a battle they're having with some of their signs and cities trying to suppress their free speech. He's involved with Stop the Islamization of America. So we got a great guy today, and he busted open a story, the Oklahoma beheading story. Robert, lay out the groundwork. Let's get the factual story on the record, and let's help folks understand what the heck is going on.
Absolutely, Tom. Well, the Islamic Society of Greater Oklahoma City seems to have been caught out flat-footed by this jah'keem Yisrael, formerly Alexander Nolan, who beheaded one woman and tried to behead another before he was stopped. He attended the Islamic Society of Greater Oklahoma City. The Islamic Society originally, right after the beheading, said, oh no, nobody knows him here. The imams never met him, never saw him. But then, unfortunately, the guy's Facebook page was still up, and it's been since pulled. But I was able to get a lot of it, and Pamela Geller also has a lot of it, and it contains a great deal about his interaction at the mosque and how he was at the mosque. His photographs of himself. One of the very interesting photographs shows the beheader, jah'keem Yisrael, holding up one finger, the index finger, in the Islamic State symbol. And flanked by two members of the mosque. And so it seems as if he was an open supporter of the Islamic State, and so were people at the mosque, because nobody was batting his hand down or saying, what are you doing putting your index finger up like that? That's the sign of Islamic monotheism, and of course they all adhere to that. Anyway, in the course of all this, a former member of the Islamic Society of Greater Oklahoma City contacted me, and he was a longtime Jihad Watch reader, and he said that he was an ex-Muslim who had actually attended the Islamic Society there in Oklahoma City for several years. It was before jah'keem Yisrael joined up. He didn't know him, but he did know the current imam, Imad Inchasi. He knew Suhaib Webb, who is the previous imam and is now the imam at the Islamic Society of Boston, which of course was the mosque frequented by the Tsarnaev brothers. And he knew that when he went there, they taught all kinds of things, like, for example, the necessity to replace the U.S. Constitution ultimately with a caliphate, which would indicate that they are in favor of the concept of the caliphate. And they had milestones sold at the bookstore in the mosque. He read milestones, this guy, who was a convert to Islam himself. And milestones, there it is. Milestones by Sayyid Qutb, who was the great Muslim Brotherhood theorist. It's essentially a manual for jihad warfare against non-Muslim states, and a highly subversive document that counsels really endless warfare by Muslims against non-Muslims. And he was shocked when he read this, but it seemed as if everybody there was completely sympathetic to it. They once told him that if Osama bin Laden showed up at the door, this was of course right after 9/11, when he went there, and he was expecting, because after all this guy's an American, that people would have been shocked and horrified and ashamed that this kind of thing had been done by Muslims, and they were not at all any of that. They said if Osama bin Laden showed up at the door, we would help him. He's a Muslim brother. They went target shooting not long after that. A couple of the other converts and him invited him to go target shooting with them. They took AK-47s. This is Oklahoma, of course, and the gentleman is not unfamiliar with guns. He didn't have any problem with the AKs, but when he got there, the targets they were using, they said this one stands for George W. Bush and this one for Ariel Sharon. Wow. And this is, of course, Oklahoma in 2003 or 2 or 3. So the idea of these mosques, or at least this particular mosque, being a place where people are completely loyal, patriotic Americans who have no trouble with constitutional freedoms and principles, it's just fictional. And it's unfortunately the case that these people are taken to be moderates and assumed to be such by law enforcement officials who seem much more concerned with conducting outreach to them than with actually investigating what's going on in these mosques, so that it takes somebody like this man who comes forward to explain what's really going on in these mosques, what our law enforcement officials ought to be monitoring, what they should know about, but which unfortunately they have no idea about.
What's going on? All right, we have 2 types of viewers. We're on the internet, obviously, with the show, but also through the radio going worldwide. 2 types of folks watching or listening. Some are pretty familiar with our type of work, but there's a whole new group of people starting to listen that are really unaware of Islamic jihad and ISIS and all of this stuff. The first question that some of those folks have is, did you say Oklahoma? There's a mosque in Oklahoma? That doesn't seem to register. How the hell did a mosque get in Oklahoma? Give us a short analysis of how mosques got in Oklahoma, Robert Spencer.
Well, Tom, it's the same all over the country. 80% of the mosques in the country are financed by the North American Islamic Trust, or NATE, which is a Muslim Brotherhood organization with considerable Saudi money. And they have been building mosques all over the country. People might not know, but pretty much every major city and quite a few minor cities have 1 or more mosques. There are several in Oklahoma City. I interviewed this man at one point the other day, just put up the interview at my website, Jihad Watch, and he says in there that there are several mosques around the area. He's been to all of them. They all teach pretty much the same things, and that's of course to be expected, because with the Saudi funding and the Muslim Brotherhood sponsorship comes the assumption that you're going to toe their line and that you're going to say what they teach. So there's not a whole lot of dissent or difference among the mosques in the United States, since 80% of them are funded by the Saudis, and 80%, coincidentally or not coincidentally, have been found in 4 separate independent studies conducted since 1998. They've been found to actually teach hatred of Jews and Christians, teach the necessity ultimately to replace the Constitution with Islamic law. And yet mosques are not the subject of surveillance. That would be Islamophobic. Mosques are not kept under any kind of scrutiny at all, any more than a church or synagogue would be. They are instead the subject of a considerable amount of pandering and outreach from our elected officials and law enforcement officials, who assume, or perhaps hope or wish, that they would be completely ordinary houses of worship, just like churches and synagogues, who pretend that there is no political or supremacist agenda involved in Islamic law, that there is no jihad imperative. But this young man, when he converted to Islam in 2001 and attended the Islamic Society of Greater Oklahoma City until 2003, he was taught explicitly by Suhaib Webb himself, this moderate, now in Boston imam, that for the non-Muslims, there was only conversion or subjugation under Islamic law or death. And that was ultimately the job of Muslims around the world, to fight them until they were given those 3 choices.
Robert, this is really amazing stuff. At 37 minutes after 4 o'clock on the East Coast on October 2nd, Tom Trento here with Robert Spencer, author of 13 books, many of them in the area of Islamic issues, religious issues. Also the director of Jihad Watch, jihadwatch.org. It's a daily blog he's been doing since 2002 or 2003, many, many years. And immediately we're discussing the recent beheading at the Vaughn food processing plant in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, where a Muslim convert went in and cut the head off of Colleen Hooford, I believe her name was, a 54-year-old grandmother, and the ramifications of that. And before we get into those specifics, Robert, because he has one of the world-class blogs on the issue, a Muslim was following this, and I'm wondering if this Noor fellow still claims to be in the Muslim world. This Noor fellow that appeared on the Kelly File recently, and that Robert interviewed. Robert, you said your interview of that individual's up on your website, jihadwatch.org now?
Yes, that's right, Tom. And I should tell you that he did leave Islam when he left the Islamic Society. He's no longer a Muslim. He grew disenchanted with the kinds of things he was being taught there, realized that it was not some sort of extremist or hijacked Islam that he was being taught, but it was just plain Quranic Islam, the Islam of Muhammad, and he didn't want it. So he left Islam. He still lives very nearby the Islamic Society of Greater Oklahoma City, and that's why we had his face obscured and voice altered on the video, as I believe Megyn Kelly did as well, because, of course, as someone who's left Islam, he's subject to Muhammad's words, if anybody changes his religion, kill him, the Islamic death penalty for anybody who leaves the faith, and so we had to take measures to protect him.
Wow, so for everyone listening and watching, this individual that approached Robert Spencer first through Jihad Watch, and then subsequently wound up on Megyn Kelly's Fox show, and I'm sure, well, I'm not sure, Robert. You would think the news, the mainstream media would want to talk to this guy, but they probably want nothing to do with someone who can expose and reveal the Islamic Jihad within these mosques. Help our viewers and listeners understand, Robert, the difference between a mosque, particularly a mosque built by the Saudis with a Wahhabist ideology, how it's unique and distinct from a synagogue or a church in terms of its function and purpose.
Well, the thing is that a mosque is a base of operations. Base in Arabic is qaida, as in Al-Qaeda. And what a lot of people don't realize is that, for example, in the Muslim Brotherhood's secret document that detailed its goals and its methodology for conquering the United States, which was a document that was never intended to be released but was captured during a raid on the jihad charity, the Holy Land Foundation, in 2007 and subsequently released during the trial. The Muslim Brotherhood sets out how it's going to conquer the United States, and it says that it's going in the first place to establish Islamic centers all around the country. Now you'll notice that a great many mosques in the United States are not called the such and such mosque. They're called the Islamic Center or the Islamic Society. And the thing about the name here is that people think that's completely innocuous, that it means it's like a convention center or a center where people gather, a society like the I don't know, the Humane Society or something, and that's all there is to it. But actually, these words mean something quite different in an Islamic context. An Islamic center or Islamic society, as is delineated in this captured internal document of the Muslim Brotherhood, is the center as in base of operations. It is the center from which the Muslims go out to conquer and Islamize the surrounding area. And this was a specific goal of this document. It said, and I quote, the Muslim brothers must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers, so that it falls and Allah's religion is victorious over other religions. Now note that it said by their hands. What they mean by that is they're going to conquer the West by the hands of Westerners. They're going to make us work against ourselves. And one of the ways they do this is by presenting these seemingly innocuous Islamic societies and Islamic centers that actually are anything but innocuous and are actually actively teaching, as our convert to Islam and then convert from Islam found out in Oklahoma City, actively teaching subversion, hatred of Jews and Christians, and the necessity to overthrow ultimately, or simply to work for the collapse of the American system so that it can be replaced by an Islamic one.
And this is not just an isolated incident, is it, Robert? I mean, this person was trained by the imam from the Boston Mosque, and Abdul Rahman al-Amoudi was the person who set up that Boston Mosque, and Abdul Rahman al-Amoudi was the person who is serving 23 years in federal prison now.
We want to make that connection, show the viewers.
This is not an isolated thing, right?
No, show the viewers and the listeners the relationship between Oklahoma City and the Islamic Center of Boston, and how there's this insidious plan being worked out. And when you read the document you just referred to, the Muslim Brotherhood's plan, you go, this isn't by default, this is by design. But before we get to that connection, which we want to make, for our viewers and listeners, because we have found, Robert, I'm sure you have too, over the past year or so, particularly the past 6 months, in particular when the 2 unfortunate Americans got beheaded by the British executioner, that the average American now is waking up and going, what is this? What are people getting beheaded? What is that all about? So this is a wonderful teaching moment. Let me ask you specifically now, when the incident at the Vaughn food processing plant occurred and the woman was attacked from behind and beheaded, the story that we're getting, and maybe you know a little more, was that this guy was fired from his job, unhappy, and this had nothing to do with Islam, nothing to do with terrorism. He just came in and he was just going to kill. The only weapon he had was a knife. He was going to kill whoever he could, as many people, because he was unhappy with getting fired from work. Can you help us understand that story?
Absolutely. That is definitely the story that the mainstream media is pushing. They're playing up the fact that he has a Christian-themed tattoo that says something about Jesus Christ. I forget what, but it's not important because obviously if he converts to Islam after that, he can't scrape the thing off his body. It's there. But it's clear from the Facebook page that he was a professing Muslim, that he was a believing Muslim, and that he had clear sympathy for the Islamic State, as I explained before. He had beheading videos. He had Osama bin Laden photos. He had Taliban photos on that Facebook page. And so this is somebody who admired people who were beheading. He admired beheading. Beheading is taught in the Quran. When you meet the unbelievers, strike at their necks. And this is something that he decided to act upon. The thing is that people have been, law enforcement and the media have been presenting the workplace violence aspect of this as if it's mutually exclusive with the Islamic aspect. As in, he's a disgruntled employee. He was just suspended. He wasn't actually fired. He was suspended. That came out later. It was originally reported that he was fired. And he's in a rage. He goes crazy and starts stabbing people and beheading. Now, certainly it's happened before that people have been fired and react violently. But the particular beheading aspect of this is particularly Islamic. That he chose to behead when he's in this situation indicates that he had breathed deeply of the Islamic milieu. He was somebody who thought in those terms. And he thought that the unbelievers, having insulted him, humiliated him perhaps in this way, that the proper way to respond to the unbelievers was the way the Quran says. When you meet the unbelievers, strike at their necks. And that's what he did.
Okay, so that's very, very important, folks. When you get this, deconstruction by the Obama administration, by law enforcement, that there's this bifurcation between a violent act and terrorism, Robert Spencer, one of the country's preeminent experts in this subject matter, has said, no, 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 no. A proper analysis, in fact, a forensic analysis, ought to be, true to the academics, ought to be considering all the elements, his Facebook page, his words, his attitude, his behavior, his photos, and you can integrate a violent act at work in the context of his ideology, Islamic jihad. That makes all the sense in the world, but it doesn't fit the narrative of the Obama administration, who's trying to pull counterterrorism analysis out because they got 6 members of the Muslim Brotherhood advising him. Robert, make for us now the connection between isolated Islamic Society of Oklahoma City and the Islamic Society of Boston. What's that connection there?
Thanks, Tom. I'm glad you came back to that because it's very important. The Imam Suhaib Webb is a reasonably well-known imam in the United States. He speaks frequently around at the Council on American Islamic Relations events, and other Muslim groups have him speak. He's popular. He is a white convert to Islam, somebody who is somebody that Muslim groups choose. They often try to highlight white converts like Ibrahim Hooper to show the universal appeal of Islam, and that it's not just something that is confined to one racial or ethnic group. In any case, Suhaib Webb is from Oklahoma, and he was the imam of the Islamic Society of Greater Oklahoma City, and now he is actually at the Islamic Society of Boston. And, you know, it was mentioned before that there was Abdur Rahman al-Amoudi, the founder of the Islamic Society of Boston. It has to be said that he's in prison for 23 years for financing al-Qaeda. That's what he's in prison for. And he is the founder of the Islamic Society of Boston. And it wasn't just the Tsarnaev brothers who went there. It was also Afia Siddiqui, who's doing 86 years for trying to murder American soldiers in jihad attacks. Tariq Mahana went there, who is doing 17 years for aiding al-Qaeda. And Ahmed Abu Samra went there, who is now the communications director for the Islamic State. And so this is supposed to be a moderate mosque. It is frequently written up in glowing terms in the Boston Globe, particularly by a spectacularly compromised reporter, Lisa Wangsness, there. And the thing is that anybody who looks at this mosque and they see Tariq Mahana went there, the Tsarnaev brothers went there, Ahmed Abu Samra went there, Afia Siddiqui went there, they got to be suspicious. But the FBI never investigated the Islamic Society of Boston, ever.
Did Al-Awlaki go there too?
For anything but outreach.
Did Al-Awlaki go there too? Wasn't Robert?
Al-Awlaki, I don't remember if he was the imam there. I don't believe so. I know he was the imam at the Dar al-Hijra Mosque in Falls Church,
That's
Virginia,
what I'm thinking of. Okay.
which was recently commended by the Virginia legislature for all its good work.
Exactly.
It's hilarious.
All right, so we have this connection through Suhaib Webb, and he's a very charismatic individual. He's got a big bump on his forehead. What is that all about?
That's a zabiba, and that comes from banging your head on the ground 5 times a day. Actually, more than
Very
5 times
hard.
a day.
Good practice.
Headbangers.
We should all do that.
It's a
We should all
headbanger,
have big callous bumps on our head.
You prostrations more than once during each set of the 5 prayers. But the thing is, that's a mark of pride. It shows how devout a Muslim you are, that you're so often in prayer that this callus develops on your forehead.
You know what? Call me silly, but I've noticed a pattern. Is when I see those big Zabita bumps on someone's head, I like
bad guys.
Chances
maybe,
are, chances are you're a redneck type of thing.
Yeah, they're
chances are you're a terrorist.
Yeah.
It's interesting to note that jah'keem Yisrael, the Oklahoma beheader, I noticed it for the first time in his booking photo, which was just released, that he has a real good zabiba himself, which indicates that even if he has not been in Islam very long, he's been going at it. He's very serious and devout about it.
Wow. All right, well, here's what we have to do now. At 51 minutes after 4 o'clock on October 2nd on the East Coast, broadcasting out of WSBR, 740 AM, Boca Raton, Florida. But on the internet worldwide on iHeartRadio, our special guest today is Mr. Robert Spencer, author of 17 million books and more to come, expert on Islamic issues, the theology, the philosophy, and in the middle of this very critically important story coming out of Oklahoma City. Robert, we got about a minute left with you. Where's this story going? And we will follow up with you on it, but where's it headed?
Tom, you know, the main thing that ought to happen now is that in the wake of the revelations from this ex-Muslim, ex-member of this mosque, and the beheading there and so on, and the connections with Boston and everything else, there ought to be an investigation of this mosque. But
You think? Yeah. Duh.
yeah,
That
but
could be Islamophobic.
Robert, I don't know if you
yeah.
met Imam Abdullah. Say hello to Mr. Spencer.
Asamach aleichem, you big Islamophobe.
Wa alaikum, how you doing?
How are you, Imam?
My head hurts from listening to the two of you bash my people.
That comes from the prostrations, my friend.
From the frustration.
I'll tell you that Suhaib Webb is doing good for a convert. And he's a beaver bump.
We ought
Yeah,
to have
nice
you
Biba
and
bump, yeah.
Spencer go at it someday. We'll do that. But you mind your business.
I heard he's coming to Florida in November.
Oh yeah, with his other buddy and his other care, and of course Robert Care is a really great group and everything.
Yeah. With the Restoration weekend, I think it is.
Oh yeah.
But in any event, you got to go to jihadwatch.org, jihadwatch.org.
Real quick question, Robert. I noticed on the Kelly Fowl thing last night that CARE is really running the forefront of this mosque now as far as like handling the media communication. Is that true? Have you found that out to be true?
I haven't heard that, but I wouldn't be in the least surprised. That's what they do. They try to obscure any Islamic connection to any violence and keep Americans ignorant and complacent. So I wouldn't be in the least surprised.
Well, the imam of that mosque has received numerous awards and been a featured speaker at CARE events.
Yes.
In the past. So, and Shazi, I believe his name is.
Yeah, Iman and Shazi, yeah.
And CARE are like pigs in a blanket.
Oh, yes.
All right, we want to pursue this.
Shazi and Suhaib Webb are thick with CARE.
Robert, we want to pursue this story and any other stuff you got going on. You let us know. We'll get you on the air. Let me give you like 30 seconds to share whatever you want to as we let you go.
Oh, well, okay. The website is Jihad Watch. That's at www.jihadwatch.org, updated many times daily with news and commentary about global jihad activity in the United States and around the world, violent and stealthy. And there you can also find links to the 13 books written by me. And they're available at any self-respecting bookstore as well as at Amazon.com and at the website jihadwatch.org.
Yeah, all right. That's a good one.
And if they want to donate, they could do that too there.
Yes, absolutely. Gratefully accepted. And Jihad Watch is a 501c3 organization.
All right. Well, Mr. Robert Spencer, Godspeed. And
Great work, Robert. Great work, buddy.
Take it easy. Keep up the good work.